Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and it's finally feeling like summertime here in Seattle. But for me, it's another week of living in a nightmare. I feel like every day things get 1% worse in the Powell household. I spare you all the terrible details each week because they are that bad. Ange has been suffering for so long, and she continues to experience some of the worst that cancer has to offer. We still hope for good days, and we're just not getting them. Right now, we're doing everything we can to get Ange mobile again so he can get back outside. I mean, Ange only leaves the house right now when she absolutely has to, and that's for doctor's appointments. I get out to walk the dog, take my kid places, pick up medicine and groceries, and tonight, if everything goes as planned, and honestly, it really doesn't usually go as planned, I'm going to escape for a couple of hours and have some beers with some buddies. The social worker at the hospital that I was talking to the other day, well, she was all for me having time with my friends, and she's like, you need to get out and have some time with your friends, and you should use this time as a support system for everything that's going on. And I had to let her know that I'm in a place right now where when I get away from cancer, I don't want to talk about it and my feelings around it. I'll deal with that at some other point in my life. If I'm going out with friends, I want to try to enjoy it. And I will say, while Ange's life is much worse than mine, it's crazy how hard being a caretaker is. It's so tiring, both mentally and physically. I mean, there's all the heavy shit going on, and then I have to worry about my kid and my dog and my work. The good news is, my dog doesn't know what's going on, but Keaton does, and while we talk about it a little bit here and there, he's a teenager and he's trying to avoid talking about it. And while we've set up a support system for him, he also just enrolled in driver's ed, and between that and school, there's no time for him to meet with anybody to do anything other than his schoolwork and driver's ed, and then he has Mondays and Fridays to be with friends. Eventually, when school gets out, he'll be able to engage with his support system, which he doesn't want to do, but he'll be able to a little bit more. And I wish all the stuff I've been talking about was all I had to worry about, just focusing on family. But there's also my two jobs. One is this podcast, and while I struggle each week to get an episode out, I'm still stoked on the quality of my interviews. If I ever feel like the podcast is getting worse because all I have going on is taking away from it, then I'll stop doing it. I'm not putting my name on a shit product. But I don't think that's happening, and I'm not worried about that right now. And then I have my other job. When I'm not recording, I'm selling stickers and tents and backdrops and all kinds of promo gear for diecutstickers.com, and that's where I need your help. If you have a sticker or a promo order or you need a tent, it doesn't matter how big or small the order is either. If you need one sticker, if you need one tent, if you need 1,000,000 stickers, if you need 100 tents, I'm your guy. Email me at mike.powell@diecutstickers.com and I will get you a 15% discount on your total order through my podcast. I believe it's the best discount we give out at diecutstickers.com. So please take me up on that with the email. But you aren't here for my diecutstickers.com email. You're here for an amazing podcast. And now it's part 2 with legendary skier Mike Douglas. If you don't remember Mike, well, he's also known as the Godfather. He helped invent the 1080, the ski that changed skiing back in the late 90s. He's been a Salomon athlete for like 30 years. He ran their Freeski TV program for 16 years. He was the winner of the K2 Back 9 contest. But now he's the point man for Travis Rice's Natural Selection Tour, the ski version of it. And on this podcast, we're going to talk about filmmaking and all things natural selection. Before we get into it, I want to thank all of you who've donated to or shared our GoFundMe. We sure are feeling the love with that, so thank you for doing that. While I'm not going to ask you to donate, only do that if you want to or if you can. I will ask you to do a few things for me. First, please tell a friend about the show. I'm not some famous athlete who has a built-in audience. I just have the best podcast in snow, and the easiest way to make sure this thing grows is to tell a friend who's into snow to check out an episode. If they do that, I think they'll check out more than one episode, and therefore the show will start growing a little bit more. And it's been growing ever since day one, so I'm not worried about it. I just want it to continue to grow. I'd also like you to share my social posts. No one seems to do that, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. The podcast still gets on a lot of earballs, so I appreciate that. If you share, I appreciate it even more. Finally, please, please, please support my incredible sponsors who make this show happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Liquid Force, and Best Day Brewing. Now it's time to chat with one of my favorites, Mike Douglas. The last time we recorded, it was 2018. You were still doing the whole Salomon Freeski TV thing, and you had been doing that forever. And that ended last year. there was a post on the internet that kind of said your production company had parted ways or whatever, you just weren't working with them anymore. And that is your long-term partner in film. I mean, they kind of gave you your start and you were able to grow underneath that umbrella. How scary was that to lose Salomon as like the partner?
Oh, well, yeah, it was scary for sure. I mean, part of me was really bummed that it was coming to an end. But on the flip side, I looked back at a relationship of 16 years of producing film content for that brand. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, I can't think of anyone else who's had a 16-year relationship like that. So I feel pretty fortunate to have had that opportunity with Salomon. And I think we made a lot of really cool stuff together. But, there's another side of me now that's bummed out because it feels like there's a little bit of a vacuum left behind. And I'd love to get back in there and mix it up again for sure.
I mean, does it make you think of doing a career pivot and doing something else, or are you still going to focus on making films?
Well, I mean, I think that there's no career, certainly that I've been through, where you're not pivoting and kind of adjusting your trajectory as you go. So I'm still working in film for sure. I'm actually editing a ski film right now with Cody Townsend. And I've got a feature documentary that I'm trying to sell right now too. So I've expanded into some new spaces. And, one thing that I've learned over the years is that change brings opportunity. And sometimes you need to be shaken up a little bit to mix things up. And it gives you opportunity to do things that maybe you couldn't do before because you were locked in year to year to year.
Yep, that is true. And you talked about feature films and a documentary that you're working on. On our last podcast, we talked about your feature film Snowman, and that was like from 2014. It won awards. It was your first feature. It didn't do as well as I think you personally wanted it to. And it kind of showed you how hard it is to really make a feature. And your buddy Kevin had an incredible story. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter just about story. It's all about the personality behind the story too. And if Kevin had like some super charismatic personality, or he was like The Rock, would that story have sold to a lot more people? Do you really need not only the story, but the person telling the story to be as important as each other?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, the movie business has changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. If you go on to Netflix these days and go into documentaries, the docs you'll see are all celebrity docs and true crime. And that's kind of it in terms of new docs. So obviously, having those big personalities, that sells films. And also those crime stories that have always seemed to captivate people. Even if you go back to like old television, NBC Dateline, those kinds of shows were on for 30, 40 years telling those types of stories. So it's a little bit of a weird space to come in from a niche point of view. And I don't know, it is a tricky time in film, but I feel pretty good about the film we were able to make with Thor, who happens to be the first guy to visit every country in the world without flying, which is an incredible story. And hopefully we can find a home for it sometime soon.
So this is a project that you've been working on for a while. And I was asking about big personalities because I wanted to transition into this one. And this guy, Thor, has been traveling the world without airplanes since 2013. And his goal is to circumvent the world, do that, go country to country and not get on a plane. First, how do you get involved with this guy, Thor?
It was Salomon that put me in touch with him. He, interestingly, left home in a pair of Salomon shoes that he bought at a store in Copenhagen, where he's from. And when they wore out along the way, he reached out to the brand and said, "Hey, would you guys be able to hook me up with a pair of shoes?" And they did. And then they told me about him and said, "Hey, do you think there's a story here?" And I kind of looked into him a little bit and what he was doing. And I was like, wow, this is pretty bonkers. So I started connecting with him and reading his blog and these kinds of things. And he's not the most charismatic guy in terms of his online presence, but he's a pretty interesting guy in real life. And what he was doing was mind blowing. Like when I started digging into it, the more I dug, the more I discovered how crazy this guy was to be doing what he was doing. Like it's got to be one of the hardest adventure and exploration feats done in this century. It's completely mental.
And does this guy have his shit together? Like, is he one of those guys that's super organized and makes everything easy on himself? Or is it more fly by the seat of his pants and everything's pretty difficult?
He is pretty organized for sure. Like he's got a really good mind for logistics and he is stubborn like no one I've ever met, like mentally stubborn. he won't quit when he sets his mind to something. And, it's almost killed him a few times. What he thought was going to take 4 years to circumnavigate the world through every country ended up taking a decade. So it's a wild story. I don't think it'll be done again. At least I don't want to meet the person that would take this on after reading his story and seeing the film, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, it is an incredible tale of perseverance, like nothing else.
What was the biggest challenge that he encountered on his journey?
Well, there were two spots that almost broke him. The first one was Central Africa. Central Africa is probably the toughest place on earth to be a human being, whether you're traveling or you live there. Just, the way human life is valued in some of those countries is just different than the way we look at it. And so you're just up against corruption and bureaucracy at every turn. I mean, he would go through be on a bus ride for 4 hours and would go through 15 check stops and would be yanked off the bus at every check stop where they'd try to get money out of him, hold him at gunpoint, turn him back. It took him 4 months just to get into Equatorial Guinea, 4 months of trying literally every day. And that almost broke him. And then the second really, really big challenge was the Pacific. And the Pacific is already really tough because you've got to take boats between all these tiny little island nations. But what made it extra tough was COVID. Happened right when he was about halfway through the Pacific.
Oh, man.
And yeah, I mean, fortunately, he got stuck in Hong Kong, which, he had access to the modern world in Hong Kong. And, there were people there that knew his story and were willing to help him. But he was stuck there for 2 years.
Oh, shit. That's crazy. So those are the biggest challenges to him, the biggest challenges for you. When you get hundreds of hours of footage, how do you make a movie that's not 7 hours?
Yeah, I think getting this movie down to a length that was watchable, we got it down to about an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That was tough. That was definitely very tough. And fortunately, I've got some talented people that I'm working with on the project that were able to come in with a pretty sharp knife at the end and be like, cut that, cut that, cut that. Sometimes we call it killing your darlings. Sometimes there's scenes that mean a lot to you because you helped film them or they carried some weight for you. But when you hear it from some outsiders that are just trying to soak up the story, you got to make some hard choices.
Yeah, I can imagine that happens and it sucks. But at the end of the day, it makes the product better. And for you, you've invested a few years of your life into this project. I mean, I'm sure you were doing stuff with Salomon as well, but there's time and money invested in it. And is it one of those deals where if you can find a studio to buy it and distribute it, you can make a pretty good chunk of change, but right now you're just struggling to break even?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to find some partners along the way unsuccessfully. So I did have to sink in, I was okay sinking the time in. I actually really enjoyed the post-production process on the film. It took about a year and I was pretty dedicated to going into the edit suite every day and tinkering away. But yeah, the financial end of it, I mean, it's just not cheap to make films. If you want to make a full feature length movie, it costs money. And it's tough because right as we were finishing the film, I follow the industry trade news in Hollywood and everyone has been kind of crying the blues for the last year and a half or so. And it seems like nobody's been able to sell independent docs. Very, very few are selling. So we'll see. I do have talented people on my side and I believe that we're doing everything we can right now. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, as much as you want to recoup your investment, I think the goal for every filmmaker is just to get their work seen.
Yeah, totally.
And I think this is a story worth seeing and something that will resonate. Stories like these don't come along very often where someone sinks 10 years of their life into something. And it's pretty remarkable what he accomplished and what he did to himself also to reach that goal.
Well, I hope we are all able to see it sooner than later. But I would think after the editing of the film while you're in the selling in project, I guess that's kind of like a lull and you don't have a project to work on other than, working on the film here and there. Is that when you get involved with natural selection?
Yeah, so that kind of happened, at a really good time for me. And I remember telling Travis Rice on the phone, I said, if you would have called me at any other time in the last decade, about this, I would have said no. Like, there's no way I could have done it. I've always had a full slate. But this year was the first year that I looked at my winter and went, well, I have a few small things lined up, but I could probably take this on. So it was a pretty cool opportunity at a good time for me.
And how does it happen? I mean, do you get a phone call out of the blue from Travis Rice saying he wants you to be involved? Or are there talks leading up to this that have been going on for years that people don't know about? Has this been in the works, or how did it all start?
The first I'd heard about natural selection ski was actually at Red Bull's Crankworks event, Joyride, up here in Whistler. And I was talking to some of the guys at that event, and Todd Barber was there, who runs NST Mountain Bike, and said, hey, I was in a meeting the other day and we were talking, your name came up, and would you be at all interested in this kind of thing? And I was like, yeah, it'd be interesting to talk about. And then Liam Griffin and Carter Westfall from NST reached out, and then Travis. And, after a few weeks of kind of back and forth, they said, well, we'd be stoked to have you lead the ski side for us. And so that kind of kicked it all off. And in, late October, I was fully on board.
From late October through natural selection, is it almost a full-time job for you? Is it like 20 to 30 hours a week of you putting in time to get this thing dialed? Are you arranging everything for the athletes?
There was a bit of a flurry of work at the beginning, getting myself up to speed with all things NST. NST has become a pretty big thing. It started just with snowboarding, as most people know, but this year they expanded into surf, bike, and skiing. And so what I think was a pretty small, tight operation before is now this pretty big thing with a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved. So learning like their systems of how they get things done, learning all the people, who does what, where. I mean, those first few weeks were pretty intense for sure. But once we kind of had the athletes figured out and the plan for Alaska set, it kind of just became some housekeeping work each week. And, December, January, even February wasn't too intense. But by the time we got into late Feb and in the weeks leading up to the event, it was pretty full on.
I mean, are you one of the first pieces added to the puzzle? So you have input on the judges and the athletes and the format and everything that's going on with the event? Is it like you're one of the first skiers plugged into it?
Kind of. There was already a ski athlete advisory group. So that consisted of Chris Banchetler, Marcus Ader, Sammy Carlson, Risti Leskinen, Michelle Parker, and Candide sort of loosely in there, I'll say. They had already, I think, had a meeting before I got there, but I did come in pretty early on. And so the six of us would get together, say once a week, and we would start talking athletes. We'd start talking judges, announcers, formats, virtually everything that you need to sort of make an event successful. And we did a lot of study on what's done at other events. What makes the Freeride World Tour good? What makes it bad? X Games, the snowboard events, like all those things, and what crossover works and what doesn't. Where are our unique challenges? I mean, simple things like things that you don't even think about, like when a skier crashes on the course, you need someone to retrieve their gear. That doesn't really happen in snowboarding. So even those type of details were things that we had to work out.
I mean, you're planning everything in an infrastructure that doesn't exist. So everything's being planned from scratch, and having that team there of people, that's where you figure out those details when you have the right people there. But when you think about it, it's like an all-star cast, but it's an all-star cast of athletes too. And I believe it's 12 total athletes that are invited. But when you have a list or a spreadsheet of all the potential people, I mean, is it like 50 different skiers that could be there? Because I would think just people that live within a mile of you. I mean, there's like the Freeride World Tour kid that wins everything is your neighbor. Then you've got Logan Peyote that's right near you. They didn't get the invite, but they probably could have skied that event pretty well. How does the selection process go between all of you guys?
That is true. I mean, we did have a huge list of athletes. Basically the first thing we did was we created a spreadsheet and just like started adding names to it. Anyone who we felt had the potential to be good at an NST style event, their name was put onto the list. And then what we did, as the athlete advisory group and myself, we went and we did kind of a selection ranking, we'll say, or it wasn't even really exactly a 1, 2, 3, 4, but more like these are the top tier that we'd like to see, and second tier, third tier, that kind of thing. And then we cross-reference that. And that created a list of, I would say, like half the field was selected there, where everybody had those people as one of their first picks. And I'll use someone obvious like Marcus Ader, for example.
Yeah.
Like everybody agreed that Marcus needed to be there. And then when we got a little further down the list, that's when the debating started. And we all acknowledged from the beginning of the process that, this list is not perfect. Like there was people being left out of the mix that were fully capable of being in there and throwing down. But ultimately, you got to make hard choices. You've got 8 men's spots, 4 women's spots, and that's how it goes.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Liquid Force. And not only are they back supporting the podcast, but this summer, they're bringing back the most important party and event in wakeboarding. That's right, Bro Stock is back, and the contest features the best riders in the world, and the event is so much more than that. But that's not all Liquid Force is up to this summer. You know what's more fun than watching the pros ride? Riding with them. And you can ride with the Liquid Force pros like Daniel Grant, Claudia Pagini, and Gunther Oka at a local lake or cable park near you at their Ride with the Pro Tour. And while Liquid Force is doing all these great things to build community on the water, they're also on the forefront of product innovation. And if you're a foil frother, you're going to want to check out the new FuseLock foil system. Wake surfers are going to love the all-new Ace and Synchro offerings. And the 2025 line features fresh boards, rad graphics, and more comp vest colorways than ever before. Park to boat to foil, Liquid Force has gear for every rider type, whether it's boat, cable, foil, or surf. To find out more about the events and the products, head on over to liquidforce.com. And when you see something you like, put it in your cart, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL15, that's all caps with no spaces, and you will save 15% off your order. Liquid Force, feel the pull. Next up, it's Elan Skis. And Elan doesn't need to support this podcast in the summertime. I've said that every summer. But they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. But if you haven't noticed, while they've always been big in Europe, Elan has built a growing cult following here in the States. It all started with the still thriving ripstick revolution that made skiing easier and more fun for anyone that tried them. That same idea, easier and more fun, is what they delivered to their Playmaker series of twin tips. How does Elan deliver a better ski experience? Well, it's all about using the best materials known to man. And that's no joke. This is the same Elan that's known for building award-winning luxury yachts. So they never cut corners. And the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Seriously, if you pick one up and you look at the edges and you see those seams of glue on all the different skis, look at Elan's and you're going to see a seamless pairing because they do take that additional time to pay that attention to detail. And it's awesome. And it makes everyone feel like they're making pro-level turns. And that's what skiing is all about, that feeling. So remember, before you buy your next pair of skis, demo a pair of Elans, or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick a pair, and elevate your skiing experience. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, managing my family, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. That's where Best Day comes in. These days, if I'm not partying, I'm still having beers, and those beers are from the award-winning Best Day Brewery. And there are a lot of NA beers out there right now, but none taste as good as Best Day. I love the hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, and everyone seems to like the Electro Lime Cerveza. I could go on and on as they have so many flavors, and I love them all. The beauty of Best Day is that they average about 60 calories and they won't get you in trouble. And pro tip, if you're partying, try to mix in a Best Day for every alcoholic beverage you have, and it will extend your night. It does it for me, and it keeps me from doing anything stupid. To have your best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com. If you make that order over $50, we'll also throw in free shipping. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. When you're involved in the infrastructure and everything that's being built, I always like to plug the back nine because I was a part of that. You were the winner of that, so you probably like plugging the back nine as well. But when you think about that, do you draw from any of the experience of that event and throw it out in any of those meetings like, hey, we did this with all these athletes and this worked well? Or is that just me dreaming?
No, for sure. I mean, I think the back nine was, I think it was the first of this kind of event, which was cool. And having been there and being a part of that, well, it's funny because I was in it and Sammy Carlson was in it. So we were for sure drawing on the experience that we had there, and not so much as like, terrain or athletes or anything, but more like logistics.
Yeah, logistics and like have the room full of shit so everybody's stoked and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we were pulling from that. We were pulling from people's experience, Free Ride World Tour to Line Catcher, Cold Rush, like all those kind of old events. And like, okay, what did they do well? What can we do well? What can we do better? And, one thing I'll give a lot of credit to the NST folks, the snowboard folks like Liam and Travis is they've got experience knowing how to do this. They've done it many, many times on the snowboard side, and they know how to treat the athletes right. And I was really impressed with when it came to making some decisions, some hard decisions down the way. Almost always the decision was, well, like, we have to do this. Like, of course we're going to do this. There was no corner cutting going on, put it that way.
No, it seemed like one of those spare no expense things where if something needed to happen, well, shit, we're going to make it happen. We'll figure it out later. And that's how these events become amazing. And you get to work with Travis Rice a lot. He's obviously a legend and he's known for putting incredible events together. Like you said, he's got so much experience doing this. Is there something different about working with him than almost anybody else you've ever worked with in snow? Does he like work on a different level than everyone else?
Yeah, kinda. There's a reason Travis Rice is Travis Rice. He is a guy that when you get to the 10 out of 10 point, he's like, well, can't we make it 11 out of 10? Like, okay. What if we just go higher or farther or whatever? Like he's the guy that's always questioning, have we reached the limit? Have we made this as good as it can possibly be? Can it be better? I admire that. That's why Travis Rice is Travis Rice. He's always willing to go just a little deeper than everyone else. As someone who works with him on the daily on an event like this, I can tell you it can be a little tough because you think you have something dialed and then Travis comes in and is like, yeah, but we can go bigger. And you're like, oh boy. So he certainly challenged me a few times, but I do have a lot of respect for the way he operates. He's an intense guy and he's dedicated to the craft. And if he's going to associate his name with it, it's going to be as good as it can be.
Does he have his hands involved in almost everything? Not totally micromanaging, but coming in with last minute changes and also outworking everyone as well, just working as hard as everybody, but in every different aspect of the event and then riding in the snowboard ones?
Yeah. That's was really impressive to me is that I either am in operations mode or I'm in ski mode, but I have real trouble crossing those two worlds over, at least like performance skiing. Like I can't be working on an event all day and then just go at the end of the day and throw down, but he totally can, which is so impressive. He'll just be running behind the scenes everywhere and meeting with sponsors and dialing in all this stuff. And then next thing you know, he's at the top on his snowboard and throws down like one of the sickest runs of the day. You're just like, ow.
It's incredible. And enough fawning over Travis Rice. I do it on any episode that has to do with snowboarding. I seem to always bring him up because he seems like someone that we don't have in skiing or have never had. I guess Shane Zox made a lot of things happen, but who else even comes close to making things happen in the ski world? Candide does for himself, but not for the greater good of skiing.
Yeah, Marcus Ader is pretty impressive.
Okay, I don't know him at all.
As a skier. His ultimate run, we have all seen that.
I've seen that. No, I'm just saying, like, as a whole, Travis not only is riding, but he just, like, does stuff to elevate the whole sport. Either way, you're in Alaska for 3 weeks. You get there right in the beginning, and is it like 20, 25 guys kind of figuring out the infrastructure at first, and then athletes come in like 10 days later?
No, there were 4 of us that came in early and literally dealt with everything on the ground. And the biggest challenge with the ski venue this year was that everything had to be flown in. And we were hoping and kind of counting on an ice road being built in that would get a lot of our gear kind of halfway to the venue and make those bumps, those plane bumps, just shorter, more efficient. But this year, thanks to warm temps, the ice road didn't go in. So everything had to be flown all the way from Anchorage, which, was a massive, massive job. I mean, there's so much gear. We built a glacier camp for 30 people. We had another camp at a lodge for 20 people. And it was just logistics wise was really major. And I'll throw out a big shout out to Rick Ross, Ryan Cruz, and Clark Fines, who were the logistics wizards there that just did such a great job of pulling that off. It is impressive to see in real life.
I mean, are we talking 3 or 4 18-wheelers full that we're bringing up on the mountain?
Yeah, pretty much. I lost track of how many flights of otter and beaver flights we put in, but it was substantial.
Like in the 50s?
No, I don't know about 50s. Honestly, don't know. I don't think it was as much as 50, but it was a lot. It was every weather window we had, we would try and get as many aircraft heading out to that glacier as possible. And I mean, it's not like you're just flying from one airport to another too. Like you're landing on a glacier in the middle of these super wild mountains, and there's just so many little variables that where things can go wrong. And the whole time, like literally, I arrived in Anchorage and the cover of the newspaper was imminent eruption of, basing on the name of it right now, but there's a volcano up there that they were expecting it to erupt any day. It was smoking daily. And this is like 10 miles from the venue. And so, I mean, we had to do things like we had to like build an evacuation plan in case the mountain blew up. We had N95 masks on the glacier so that if the mountain blew, that everyone could have like some kind of protection from breathing in volcanic dust. It was crazy.
You have to talk about that at the athlete meeting too. Like we not only have an injury plan for if anything happens, but we also have a safety plan if the volcano near the mountain erupts. We've never had to say this before, but we're letting you know.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
I mean, that is just so crazy. And then with your role, I mean, you're the athlete liaison. You're making sure everybody's where they need to be. Everybody has what they need. I think you're the guy who's calling each person and letting them know that they're in this event, which to a skier, being part of natural selection in its inaugural year has to be quite an honor. And which were the calls where people were most stoked?
Yeah, that was one of the best parts of the job for sure, was calling everyone and letting them know, because every single skier was fired up. Like people knew it was happening, but nobody knew who was going to get the spot. Everybody was excited to some point, but I would say there was no one quite as fired up as Parker White. Parker White's call was amazing. He said he had tears running down his face. He was so happy.
Was he screaming and yelling?
He wasn't screaming and yelling. He was just like so thankful and gracious and just talked about how much this meant to him. Especially, he's one of the older competitors in the group, and he knew that his chances of getting a spot in the future were limited. So he was just over the moon, and it was so cool. And I think you've had Parker on the podcast before, but he is such a gem. It was funny when we were up at Winter Lake Lodge and having the athlete dinners. It was always a little bit of a battle as to who could sit next to Parker at dinner, because the guy just has so many stories, and he is so funny.
I would think that when you guys are voting in athletes, not that personality plays into it and that didn't get him into it, but like that's the asterisk. You want a guy like that there who can not only ski just as well as everybody else there, but just because he's so fucking funny and awesome to be around.
Yeah, we tried to be a little more objective than picking on personality, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have a guy that's that stoked around. And it's just good for everybody. Like he brought such fun vibes to the group. And when he drew bib number 1, so he was going to be first out of the gate on comp day, everyone was so fired up because it was just like the perfect guy. It was like the script was written,
Yeah.
And right away, he hit the big rock at the top, which I had been eyeing up the whole time and sending pics of it to all the athletes. And he was the perfect guy to start, and such a gracious dude too. Like he immediately radioed up to the top because there was a lot of concern about the conditions. You've seen it, so you'll know what I'm talking about. But people were really curious, like, okay, how bad are those crusty south sides of those spines? And Parker radioed up with a detailed report for everybody, like trying to give them as much beta as he could, which was so cool. And that was just indicative of the whole vibe of the event. It was probably the best competition vibes that I've ever been around. Everyone got along super well the entire time. Very helpful, very like just cheerleaders of the sport, which is exactly what you want in an event like that.
And to take it back to when you're letting these guys know about the event, is the whole deal like, hey, you get yourself to Alaska, and the second you get to the airport, you're on our dime, and we'll give you a stipend to get here? Is that kind of how that kind of thing works?
They had to get themselves there. When they were in Alaska, most things were taken care of by NST, hotel rooms and accommodation. When they were at the lodge or on the glacier, food was taken care of. We had them staged at Alyeska while the weather was bad and we were waiting to get out into the field. And so they had to cover their own food and things there. But we made sure that the minimum prize money they would win would cover their travel and any expenses that they might have while they're in AK.
So everyone got a check.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, you guys went to Alyeska and the spa was open to those guys and gals, and it was full on bonding experience and they could ski and do whatever they wanted. But it also sounded like a weather window. When it started to open up, there was a bluebird day. These guys are in Alyeska. Travis was like, well, shit, we better get all these guys out here skiing because it's going to be good, even though it's not a contest day. And I think you've referred to it as maybe the best day of skiing of your life or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
or no, you said it was the best vibe of your life of watching.
Yeah,
all
I
those
just
dudes
think
skiing.
yeah, the vibes were so good. So yeah, it's exactly what happened was we weren't quite ready at the venue because we'd had a few down days with the weather and we were still trying to get a couple of plane loads more gear in there to make sure the camera crew was set up and ready to film this whole thing. But we had a full Bluebird day. And so Travis is like, well, we got the helis on standby. Like, let's go ski. And I was like, yeah, okay. So they all drove and flew up to Winter Lake Lodge, where the helis bumped the whole group over to this kind of zone pretty close to the lodge. And then it was just like, we're standing there and it's like the top 12 skiers in the world and Travis Rice. And it was just a throwdown from literally the first turn. Like the first turn was an in run to this wind lip and everybody threw tricks off and stomped. And it was just like, holy cow, this is pretty cool.
And is everybody like gathering at the bottom and watching everybody take run by run of just like watching a movie in real time?
Pretty much, yeah. What's so impressive with these skiers at this level is that they don't need really to warm up, or they just kind of turn it on. And the energy was just building during the day. And you would think like it would be super intimidating, but it wasn't really. Like people were just teeing off and trying stuff and for the most part pulling it off and just cheering each other on. It was something pretty cool to witness.
So then you guys go back down to Alyeska and then you're shuttled back up to the lodge a couple days later?
Yeah, exactly. We had a weather day the next day and then we got everyone bumped in because we thought the event was going to be coming soon. We saw a weather window open up. And then when we thought maybe we could pull off the event, the venue was socked in, but where we were at the lodge was actually clear. And so we're like, well, I guess we're going skiing again. So we went back out and did another session near the lodge. That was super fun. Once again, a crazy throwdown. And then after that, it was kind of like, okay, wait, we're just watching the weather at the venue. And, it had been cold and the snow was really good the entire time I was in AK, lots of good little weather windows. And then I remember getting out to the venue the day before where we had to get all the final prep done and get the start area dialed in and the finish area built and all those things. We were ready to go. And I remember I got out there and I stepped onto the glacier. And as soon as I got outside, I was like, uh-oh, it was warm. It was the first time, like I've been there for over 2 weeks at that point. It was the first time I felt warmth, that moist, warm air. And my heart just sank because I knew what that meant. And I got up on slope with Travis And we were off on one corner of the venue that was kind of like a warm-up zone, and made my first turn, and my heart just sank because I was like, oh no, the snow's turning. This is not good. This is not good. So yeah, I sent a message back to the athletes because they were back at the lodge.
Have they already been to the zone and looked at everything and had a chance to kind of inspect it before this?
Yeah, so they'd come out the day before. We had like a partial clear day, not enough to pull the comp off, but enough to get them out there and just take a look with their own eyes. So they did get to look, and everyone was dropped at the top, could look down the venue, look from the bottom. Some people got to look from the side. We also took a ton of photos and flew all the zones with a drone. And they had access to all the video. They could watch and scope features up close and all that kind of stuff. So we tried to give them all the tools that they could possibly need to perform at their best, as long as it didn't involve putting a turn on that slope. But what they didn't know, because they weren't there the day that it warmed up, and I sent that message back and I said, hey, it's cooking on the south side of the spines, and it's probably going to be pretty ugly tomorrow. So come up with a plan that avoids that terrain as much as possible. We saw the event, and that was obviously very, very tricky to be anywhere on those crusty sides of those spines.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start things out with outdoor research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build their products to perform in the wet and soggy cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class. While OR has always been known for building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, skiers, and snowboarders, they've gone all in on an award-winning bike line that FreeHub describes as outdoor research has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional but also stylish and durable. That meticulous design and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. So high praise, and Outdoor Research is doing a lot of things on the athlete side. While they launched with an incredible team, they had the Van Steenbergen brothers, Georgia Astley. This year, they've added Casey Brown, Carson Storch, and others. And between the athletes and the events they support, while OR might be new to the bike world, they've always lived it, and there's not many brands doing what OR is doing in the world of bike. To see the new products and what the hype is all about, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. Think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone at Stanley. And between the unique colors and the collaborations that Stanley's doing, there really is something for everyone in the Stanley line. And they're not going to gouge you with crazy prices. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you and me with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my code. To use it, head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and buy a ton of stuff because, like I said, this code is 30% off. It's the best deal that Stanley offers. And when you check out, enter the code capital P-O-W-E-L-L. That's Powell 2025. So no spaces in between that. Capital P-O-W-E-L-L 2025. That's where you get your code. Thank you very much for the support, Stanley. They make the best gear in the world. You've seen them everywhere. And if you don't have one, you definitely need one. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Craig was saying that it was one of those things where in New Zealand, they wouldn't have competed in those conditions almost. So it had to be heartbreaking for all of you guys involved, especially the guys who'd been there for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember the day before the comp and feeling that warmth and knowing what that meant. Yeah, we were bummed. But the attitude on the slope was like, hey, it's Bluebird, it's Alaska. There is still good snow here. Let's just give it a good shot. Let's just do our best. And there was a big sigh of relief when Parker came out of the gate, threw down a pretty good run on his first run. And it was like, okay, this is skiable. This is doable for sure. That was quickly erased when Kai Jones came down and kicked off, a pretty sizable slide and avalanched a good section of the main venue.
Yep.
I almost had a heart attack, I think, when I saw that. Kai handled it super, super well. He's such a mature skier for his age. Did all the right things, kept himself out of trouble. But I was watching the snow slide off the venue and just being like, oh no, this is not good at all. But, you know, these are the best skiers in the world. And I was quickly reassured when I think it was Sam Kuch came down and just laced one. And I was just like, holy smokes, bad conditions don't matter for these guys. And it was pretty impressive to see what they were able to do, just knowing the conditions. And I think all the skiers, you know, the serious skiers that have watched that broadcast can respect, you know, how challenging that would be to have that crusty, punchy, loud snow on one side, kind of this deep, moist powder on the other side. You know, a lot of people have skied those conditions and can respect what it took for those guys and girls to ski down that face.
For sure. And I think everybody should go watch the event on Red Bull TV because it's really mind-blowing and we could talk about it, but we're not going to talk about the full event. What we will talk about is Craig Murray and Sam Kuch just skiing on a different level than everybody else. I mean, you could see that right away that while there's trick guys that are doing more tricks than these guys had tricks, but their skiing was different than everybody else's. Is that something that you noticed right away too?
Oh, yeah. We all picked up on that. I mean, going into the event, I expected to see a good bag of tricks coming from this crew, like the best of the best. They're going to be able to throw down. The venue had tons of features that you could jump off. So I expected to see double flips and cork sevens and everything that we did see. But what I didn't expect as much was the speed game that Sam and Craig brought. That was something that caught me by surprise. And all of a sudden, like, I remember it wasn't until we got onto the finals venue, like the looker's right side of the venue, where all of a sudden what, you know, seemed to be a less featured part of the mountain, I started to notice like the features that Craig was looking at were things that I wouldn't even consider as features before that day. I mean, these guys are coming in at like 50 miles an hour and cross-cutting spines and using the spines as a booter. I was just like, are you kidding me? I mean, the commentary from the athletes and myself in the finish line would be hilarious. Like, where's he go? What? Oh my God.
Like not your traditional fall line skier skiing the mountain, totally different.
Totally different. Yeah, it's like every mountain feature became a transition. It wasn't fall line, jump off the end of the spine, jump off the end of the rock. It was like, no, tee up that cliff at the top, carry a ton of speed out of it, cross court as fast as you possibly can across these. I mean, you see these little runnels and things like that look like nothing on TV, but when you're there, those things are like waist deep. And they're just flying through and bouncing off these things. And then all of a sudden, poof, off a spine with a 50-foot air. And you're just like, where did that come from? And then Kuch in the finals went for the biggest one. Like we saw the speed he was taking. We saw what he's going for. And we're like, where is he going to land? Like, where is there even a landing off that thing? And he almost got there. I mean, he must have dropped like 80 feet out of the air or something. It was absolutely mental.
And when this thing's over, it doesn't become public knowledge for, I would think, like a month or something like that. How hard is it to keep the whole results and everything that happened under wraps?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with a fairly small athlete group, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it is weird, but we were also in the middle of nowhere, which kind of helps. You know, it was just us. We were isolated up there. And you know, I think after a day or two, that urge to tell everyone kind of like backs off a little bit. So we were all still in Alaska and like starting to head home and, you know, you can chill. But for sure, everybody wants to know what happened. And keep in mind, like it happened in March. So it's still like ski season and people are skiing powder days and people are fired up. By the time the broadcast came out right before the Easter weekend, you know, the weather's turning. You know, here in Whistler, at least, it was like super warm. You know, people were kind of in shorts that day. So it's a little bit trickier to hold the stoke and the vibes. But we had a watch party here in Whistler at RMU, and we had, you know, 30 plus people come out to watch. And it was a big relief for me, at least, to see the stoke and the energy in the room as the runs were coming down. And I felt like, whew, yeah, we pulled this off.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And I like to talk about money in all these podcasts, and I'm sure there was a stipend for you. Your time doesn't come for free, nor do all the best athletes, nor do all the best people behind the lens, the people in front of the camera. All those people were there at that event. What do you think something like that costs? Is it like a couple $1,000,000 to make that event happen?
It's not cheap. That's for sure. There's a lot of expense to pull off an event like that with that many moving parts and that many people. I actually don't know what the budget was. I'll say it's not cheap. And we didn't cut a lot of corners. You know, if we had to pay for something, if we needed to do something, we did it. We did have some great supporters. We've got good sponsors that stepped up. And it's interesting because it's not like they're just throwing money around and everyone's getting rich. I think everyone involved in this thing is just really stoked on this kind of stuff, on these sports, on this kind of energy, on pulling off something that's really difficult, that's not been done before. That's really what drives these people. You feel it in every meeting that I go to with the NST crew. It's a bunch of people that want to see ski, snowboard, surf, bike culture thrive and bring that energy to the masses in some way, in the best way we can.
Well, I think it's one of the best things going in sport right now, especially in action sports. And will we see another one of these next year?
Yeah, that's the plan right now. There's a lot of talk about what next year's going to look like. We're still meeting weekly and trying to build a plan, but right now it looks like there will be another round of NST in all sports, and certainly skiing. What exactly that looks like, I'm not sure yet, but I'm sure you'll hear when the time's right.
All right. Well, my favorite ones, even though they were long and sometimes people complained, I love the live stream where it was real, but I know that's a really big challenge to make those things happen. Regardless, at this point, that's our podcast. We could talk about your life and times, but we've already done that. People can hear that back in 2018, and it's incredible. It is arguably the best podcast I have ever done, and we can just say that because you're on the line right now. But now it is time for Inappropriate Questions, and this is where I get someone to ask you 3 questions, and they can be anything. The thing for you is that you don't do anything inappropriate. And a lot of people that I've talked to just had nothing inappropriate to say or inappropriate questions for you. And last time I asked you the questions, I didn't have anything good. But this time I was able to get one of your good friends, an award-winning writer who you've traveled the world with to ski. I'm talking about Les Anthony, to come up with 3 questions. And Les was challenged as well. He's like, he doesn't do that many inappropriate things. So we'll see what he puts you on the hook for right now. Here is question number 1.
Are there any sports you've tried that you think you're a failure at?
I'm not a great team sports guy. I'm pretty sucky at that. Anyone who plays team sports with me usually picks me as one of the last ones. So there's that.
All right. What's your most embarrassing team sport moment of sucking? Do you have one or no?
I was playing goalie at summer camp way back in the day, back in probably the late 90s. And I think there's like a 12-year-old came in and shot the ball at me and then it ended up breaking my finger. So that was a little bit embarrassing. Oh, and I just remembered also in the 90s, I was playing tennis once, managed to knock my front tooth out with my own tennis racket. So there's that.
And I learned recently in Canada, I don't think they pay for teeth. So did you have to go like get your front tooth fixed yourself because you're an idiot at tennis?
Yes.
All right, there we go. We're going to go with question number 2.
10 years ago, your name was often associated with the hashtag Good Times Crew. Or should that be read Good Times Screw? Which way is correct? And what the heck is it?
Yeah, the Good Times Crew. It was Good Times Crew, not Good Times Screw. But yeah, it could be read that way. We weren't quite that fun. That was a group that we would get together and try to do one film trip a year. It was myself, Les Anthony, Kai Zackerson, Ben Mullen, and Matthias Fredriksson. And we were on a roll. We would do these road trips in Europe where we would just go fly into a European city, pick up rental cars or jump on a train or whatever and just chase snow for 2 weeks. And lots of stories, lots of good times from those trips. Miss those guys for sure.
All right, the life of Mike Douglas. We will go to your last inappropriate question because I believe he came up with 4.
Have you ever been stuck on a decrepit lift, wondering if you were going to die?
Yes, Les wasn't in the lift.
Like the movie Frozen?
No, this was a cable car in Italy. And actually, I want to say it was my closest near-death experience. It was myself and Kai Zackerson. It was the Good Times crew, Kai Zackerson, Ben Mullen, Blair Richmond. And we were in a cable car in Italy. We were coming down the mountain. It's a weird, long story. We just had to run up and do something quick in the morning. We just decided to take the cable car down. And the cable car is about a third of the way down the mountain. And all of a sudden, it like emergency stops, like lurches to a stop. And we see the haul cable drop like past the window. And we're like, oh, that's not good. And this thing's like 50, 60 years old. It's really old. Like you hear about these Italian cable cars falling. Well, it was one of those. And anyway, it's just us in the cabin. And there's the tram driver. They always have a tram driver. And then the mountain manager, it turns out, was in there with us. And they're just yelling in Italian. You can tell like this is really bad what's happening. We don't understand them, but the body language says a lot. Anyway, the mountain manager gets up onto the top of the cable car and he's trying to put the emergency brake on to lock us to the cable so we don't fall. And there's like hydraulic fluid going everywhere. And the thing is lurching. Like every 5 minutes, it would lurch like 3 or 4 feet down the cable. We would kind of have a heart attack each time. And we're a film crew, so we've got like cameras and everything. And I remember at one point looking at the guys and being like, should we be filming this? And everyone's like, nah. And we were like, well, if we're going to die, like, who cares? Like, we just didn't feel like filming it. We're just like, well, I don't really want to film the last half hour of my life. And we're like, should we be calling home to tell our loved ones that we love them? I mean, we're like 300 feet off the ground too. Keep that in mind.
It's insane.
Yeah. And then so we decide to not call our loved ones because it's the middle of the night. We thought getting them up in the middle of the night to just tell them that we're going to die is not a good idea either. But this went on for about an hour and 45 minutes.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And it just kept lurching. And eventually we got lowered down at less than walking speed all the way down the mountain into the bottom station. You know, we survived. We get out of the thing. The tram driver throws his arms up in the air. He's Italian. And he says, follow me. And so we follow him. We're thinking like, oh, we're going to have to go sign some papers or do like a statement or something like that. And he takes us to this bar in the bottom of the tram station. And he orders a batch of shooters for all of us. And we grab the shooters. We toss them back. He just holds up his empty glass and goes, I quit. Never again. And he throws the glass and walks out of the building.
That is amazing, man. That is so awesome. That is Inappropriate Questions. That is our podcast. I know I said I had another question, but it's not as good as that. So we're going to end that thing there. That was amazing. I will say that in my 9 years of doing this podcast, you have been one of my greatest supporters behind the scenes between all of your help on the episodes, all the shit that you did with Freeski TV that I use as research for a lot of my podcasts. You have been one of the guys that I lean into to make this thing happen. And really, whenever I even want to talk to somebody, I know I can always call you and you'll be an ear for me. We've had some heavy conversations that I never thought 15 years ago I'd be having with the Godfather, but sure enough, I have. I want to thank you for everything that you've done for skiing. You made this sport go from forward to backwards, and it was a big change back in the late 90s with the new Canadian Air Force. You've done more with Freeski TV and getting skiing in front of so many people's eyes than most people can say they'll ever do in a lifetime. And I thank you for all you've done, Mike, and I thank you for your time.
I wish you nothing but the best, Mike. And I know you're going through a hard time, buddy, but you've got a lot of people who love and support you and are there for you. So all the best, buddy.
So that was time with Mike Douglas. And while this podcast wasn't really about Mike, I really love that guy and hope that all of you check out his podcast. It's episode 94 in my archive, and you'll hear the story of one of the pioneers of the new school who impacted how the product was built, how it was used, how it was shot, and how it was presented to the masses. That's why it's so cool that Travis Rice brought in Mike Douglas to be the guy here. And it was amazing to get the behind the scenes on an event that is arguably the most important event in skiing next to the Payne McSlonky. That's the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing and reviewing me wherever you listen. And most importantly, please support the incredible sponsors who bring this weekly deep dive into the history of sport to you. The brands that make the Powell movement happen are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Liquid Force, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.